Okay, next up in this Canada Rocks conference is Chris Evans, the MD of Winsome Resources. Winsome went public in November or December of 2021, about 15 months ago at 20 cents. The stock's been as high as 240 or 250. It's now taken a hit, 165 as we speak today. Market cap about 281 million Aussie. Doing the questioning for Winsome is going to be Ernie Ortiz of Lithium Royalty Corp. Ernie is a good friend of mine for a long time, but Lithium Royalty Corp anchored the IPO as well as had a royalty. We've been working with Chris and Winsome, 6 months prior to the IPO, and have had him on Rockstock Channel a couple of times in Minds and Money Forum, and others. So following Patriot, which is now north of $1 billion market cap, Winsome is also in the hottest area in lithium space, now is Quebec in the James Bay area, and had some very exciting drill results toward the end of last year, which re-rated the stock and on much higher volume. So with that, I'll leave it with Ernie to do the questioning, and I'll come in toward the end.
Great. Thanks, Howard, and good to see you, Chris. So first, we'll start off with your key flagship projects, which are Adina and Cancet. So can you just give us an update on the status of the programs, the drill campaigns, and what are your plans for a mineral resource with those projects? So can you start with that?
Yes, certainly. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Howard, and nice to see you again, Ernie. I think the most action we've got at the moment is at Adina. We've got 2 drill rigs there as we speak, and they're working on what we're calling the Jamar main zone. And that's an area of 700 metres strike length, roughly 50 metres true width, and then 200 metres depth, that we're drilling away with those 2 drill rigs, working towards being able to put out a mineral resource in the near future. We've got a 3rd drill rig arriving because we announced roughly a month ago that we've discovered a new, what looks like mineralised intercept about 1 kilometre to the east. So by the end of this week, we'll have 3 drill rigs working at Adina. And they're all heli-mounted rigs. We've got 1 drill rig at Cancet, that's a ground rig, and that's investigating the many gravity targets we have across the property. Cancet's a very big property, and it's also extending and deepening the drilling we've done on the currently discovered outcrop that sits right on the Trans-Tyger Highway, which we've previously talked about. Once we see that we'll be in a position by about mid-year to put out a mineral resource if we choose at Adina. And I say if we choose because we don't know yet whether we will, given that there's so many targets and so much more potential at Adina. And Can is an interesting one. I see it as a sleeping giant. As you know, it sits only 30 kilometres to the west of Patriot. We've discovered a roughly 3 million tonne outcrop, and now we're investigating all these other targets. So we think Cancet's probably a bit longer to get a mineral resource, but we're certainly working towards it.
Great. And what's the plan from an environmental standpoint with environmental baseline studies and just progressing it from a permitting standpoint?
We've done the baseline environmental study at Cancet, and we're currently underway with the baseline study at Adina. We're also doing a study on a potential road route, an all-weather road from Adina up to the Trans-Tyger Highway. Although the government, the provincial government, has got plans to put a road in from the Renard mine, which is to the south of Adina, up to the Trans-Tyger, which will open up the north of James Bay. We're about to appoint a VP of approvals and sustainability, and their job will be solely to focus on the environmental approvals and interactions with the First Nations people.
That's good to hear. And you've also assembled a nice portfolio of various assets in Quebec, key ones being Cermak and Tocel. So maybe just on Cermak, it's fairly close to the Moblan property that Sayona Mining Limited has, but also Vision Lithium is now talking about DSO potential out of their Cermak neighboring property. Can you just discuss what the plan is at Cermak and as far as exploration and next steps there?
Yeah, we really like Cermak, of course, because we use it as one of our properties to list with. We think it's got great potential. We've done very little work on it as yet. But as you say, it sits 30 kilometres as the crow flies from Moblan, and it's immediately adjacent to Vision Lithium's albeit small resource, but I quite like their plans for that DSO operation. To us, it looks like their pegmatite plunges are under our ground, but we just, with all the attention that we've had to give Adina and Cancet over the last 15 months, we haven't got to Cermak yet, but we certainly will. In the summer, when the snow melts in a couple of months, we'll have teams on the ground to start investigating that property, as we will with both Tocel and Mazarak further to the south. They're very interesting properties.
Great. And it leads us to, I guess, just Tocel. Can you walk us through what you saw as the potential there and what attracted you to it? It seems like it has great infrastructure next to many neighboring gold mines and various other properties, but just curious what the rationale is there and what you're thinking about it on a long-term basis.
As you say, it sits within, well, close to infrastructure. There's numerous mines around it. It's within an hour's drive of both Rouen and Val d'Or, big mining towns within Quebec. We've got about 50,000 hectares there in total between Tocel and Mazarak, the two projects. And there's been numerous discoveries of lithium at surface all around us. Vision Lithium, Sayona's actually discovered some, Brunswick Exploration also. The geological setting is very favourable, and of course there's lithium all around us. So we think those properties hold a lot of potential, and again, we'll put teams on the ground in the summer. But for us, because they're greenfield in a very prospective area, they provide a pipeline of projects so that in 2 years' time, say when we're in the development phase of Adina, we've still got some exploration going on for these earlier projects. And I think a company like us, or any development company, needs some blue sky for investors and continual exploration and discoveries, which these properties should offer.
Right. And then you've also increased your involvement in Ontario with Power Metals. So can you just discuss your investment there and what you see as your long-term involvement?
Yeah, Power Metals for us was a great opportunity, and we've been talking about this since IPO. The fact that Canada still offers a lot of opportunities, strategic opportunities for a company like us who is focused on lithium. When we saw that Sinomine was ordered by the Canadian government to divest their interest in Power Metals, we quickly jumped in there. We purchased 5.5% of the company for $2 million. But with that also came a board seat, and most importantly, the offtake rights for all lithium, cesium, and tantalum, as long as we hold more than 2% in the company. We had a look at the project. There's been 13,000 metres of drilling already. It was primarily focused on cesium. However, they kept hitting lithium. So my view is that by the end of this year, with a concerted drilling campaign, we can get an initial resource at Case Lake. And so with that in mind, Power Metals just did a circa $6 million raising, and Winsome Resources took a large part of the back end of that so that we could increase our stake to 10% of the company. So we intend to provide some strategic advice and some of the expertise we've picked up in Canada over the last 10 months to help Power Metals get a resource as soon as possible over the Case Lake project.
Great. And then can you just remind us the size of your last capital raise and what the plans are for use of proceeds?
Yes. So we aim to raise $60 million Australian, and that consisted of 19 million using flow-through funding that's available in Canada. So that is pretty much restricted to being used directly on drilling, and we're very confident we can spend that by the end of next year on the drilling campaign we planned. We then raised 31 million Australian hard dollars via institutional placements. And then we did a $10 million share purchase plan to existing shareholders. All of that was priced at $2. We brought in $2 million from the 10 of the SPP. We have some time left to place that. We'll see how we go. We'll probably close that out. It gives us, even without the SPP being fully filled, we've got roughly $60 million in the bank. And the use of funds really is the drilling campaigns at Adina and Cancet, but also doing the various studies that will lead towards the PEA. So we're doing the environmental studies you referred to before, metallurgical test work, and then infrastructure studies to support that PEA over the coming 12 months.
Oh, good. Lots going on. Then you're obviously a lithium veteran. You've added Stephen Biggins to the board as non-exec chairman. Can you just talk about plans for adding additional personnel? And it must be pretty competitive now in Quebec, but it seems like it hasn't slowed you down. So can you talk about what you're seeing adding to the team and just the human capital in Quebec?
We're doing a couple of things on the human capital front. We're appointing a few senior people in country as executives. So a VP of approvals and sustainability that I referred to before, will be appointed very soon. We're going to shuffle around a little bit the team so that Carl Carmartin, our current country manager and VP exploration, can move fully into the country manager role. So we're looking for a new VP exploration, which will bolster our team in country. And board-wise, I think we could certainly do with a bit of diversity on the board, and we could probably do with a North American on the board. So we bear that in mind. We've got 4 people at the moment. There's room for a bit more. But we also like the idea of an advisory board, which is often done, not so much in Australia, but in Canada. And the advisory board typically consists of experts in various fields that Winsome will be operating in Canada to advise the board and potentially be a feeder to the board. So we're looking around for a whole lot of senior people, well qualified in the mining, financial and environmental space.
Oh, good. And lastly, can you talk about what we should expect as far as news flow on the assays, or what you're thinking about results in the near future? And then just on the mining front, how beneficial is it for you to have just a lot of results being very close to surface? And how does that impact mining cost and your mining plans?
Well, I think over the next 12 months, there's going to be continual news flow in terms of drilling results. Now, of course, we have people from all quarters hounding us for continual results. For us, it's about assays are still relatively slow, 6 to 8 weeks to come in. For us, it's pulling together the assays into a meaningful announcement and a material announcement to put out to the market, which is what we're doing at the moment. We expect an announcement very shortly with the next series of drill holes. And as I say, those will continually come out while we're drilling over the next 12 months or so. There'll be various announcements relating to our PEA, which we're working on in sort of environmental studies and metallurgical test work results. And I think with us, given that our deposit at Adina is at surface, I think that, of course, that will help the mining cost. There's virtually no overburden to remove. And I think it's a relatively permit light project, in that we sit on a plateau above the surrounding landscape. Water doesn't appear to be an issue, as in lakes around us. And we appear to have good relationships with the First Nations people. So as far as mining projects and approvals go in Quebec, there doesn't seem to be any trip-ups so far. So we look forward to doing our surveys, appointing a VP of approvals, and then getting this project permitted as soon as possible.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Over to you, Howard.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. Just to wrap up or put an additional point, I forgot to mention, Chris, we've known each other since your Altura days when you were the chief operating officer there. You took me around while that was under construction. You then left to join what is now Leo Lithium. I guess it was Barimian or Mali Lithium before that. And like many of your fellow Crocodile Dundee brethren from Australia, have made your way over to Canada and using, the skills you honed in Western Australia now to make what looks like a very significant discovery, but you're still very much in that discovery phase. And we've seen this with Patriot and others that it goes up a lot. And then, there's another set of drill results and it kind of comes in and then it goes up. So we're in a market environment, these are high risk still exploration. They're very high beta to the broader, lithium thematic. But as Ernie just questioned you, there's a lot of, in your answers, a lot of news flow to come just on the basic exploration results. You're a couple of months behind Patriot, it seems to me, and hopefully you'll be seeing similar type intercepts. And with that, thank you very much, Chris. And we look forward to continuing the dialogue and watching WR1.